this whole idea of Islamists, Islamism, political Islam was just starting to take off. Now, of course, it's spread like a virus throughout the world, but at this time it was just starting. And so she caught it right at the beginning when she went to the mosque. And she met this Egyptian man there who was already married, already had 3 children, but took my mom on as his second wife. So in Islam, a man can have up to 4 wives. So my mom was wife number 2. So this guy entered our lives like a bomb, Suddenly, my mom has to start covering her hair. He took her records. We always had music playing in the house. Well, this guy comes along and says, music is forbidden. Music is from the devil. Music is haram. So he took all of her records, Dolly Parton, Kenny Rogers, Hank Williams. She used to love listening to country music. And he broke them all. And he sat us down in front of him and he handed us her records. And he said, break these. I was like, I'm not going to break my mom's stuff. Like, what the? And I look at my mom and she's just like got her face looking down on the carpet. She's not even, I was shocked because if my brother walked into my room and started breaking my Barbies, I'd be enraged, but she wasn't moving. And that was sort of like the moment I understood that this guy is in charge now and that my mom is just a submissive, I don't know what happened to her. And that was it. Then it was like we were forced into hijab. I wasn't allowed to ride a bike anymore. I wasn't allowed to go swimming anymore. I wasn't allowed to have non-Muslim friends anymore. This is harsh. Like this is a 6-year-old girl suddenly being told your best friends, Chelsea and Lindsay, they used to walk because I was in an apartment building. I'd walk down the hall to their places and we'd play Barbies together. All of that was forbidden. No birthdays, like everything that was important to a kid was taken away. And so I hated him, of course. And I hated what he was doing to my mom. I hated that she was covering herself in this ugly gray cloth. I hated everything about this guy. But this is my life now. And we moved into his house, into his basement, to be precise. Started going to Islamic schools and my whole life changed. And I was constantly resentful, constantly waiting for the day that my mom would go back to the way she was before. Snap out of it. Whatever it is that he's done to you, just go back to who you were. But she wouldn't. And he would beat us up like mercilessly. And she would just turn a blind eye. And no matter what he wanted to do, she never had a word to say about it. And I waited and I waited and I waited, but she wasn't going to come out of this, I describe her as a born-again Muslim. I think that's the best way for people to get it.
The zeal of the converts. Correct.
And she would actually say that. She'd say, I have to make up for all those years that I was wearing a miniskirt. So she has to over Muslim to make up for that. So all of these, some of your listeners might know these names like Sayyid al-Qutb, Hassan al-Banna, all of these Islamist military strategist, kind of people. Not necessarily military as in weaponry, but with spreading Islamism through, like you were saying, using woke methodology or using, these different subversive methods, using secular laws against themselves and stuff like that. That's how these guys wanted to spread Islam.
They even got people like Edward Said, who I think was a very secular, great thinker, and gradually went that way.
Another one of her heroes.
Oh.
Yeah. So that was my childhood. All of these guys were the heroes of my childhood. These are the people that my mom just hook, line, and sinker. Whoosh, she went right into that to the point that it started to not even be enough. And this is why she got me married off to an Al-Qaeda terrorist.
Did she know it was an Al-Qaeda?
Oh, she knew. Yeah. She felt that he was the most wonderful, most Muslim that you could possibly imagine, because he followed the religion. She got to the point where even the Islamists weren't good enough because they were too weak.
Wow.
Yeah. Whereas the jihadis knew how to be strong Muslims. And so she'd say things like, she'd laugh at like Christians who say, they'll turn the other cheek. And she'll be like, good, it's easier to chop off your head.
Wow.
That's how she became. She went that far.
That's so difficult to understand, that your own mum's doing that and you're young and you're trying to deal with that. And now you're with an Al-Qaeda. These Al-Qaeda guys are terrorists. Do they ever switch off like from that?
No. I mean, he doesn't even switch off to the point that he was in prison for 15 years. And then when there was an Islamist president named Morsi in Egypt for a very short amount of time, but in that time, he let out of prison all of the political prisoners. So basically all of his people. And Assam was one of those people that was let out of prison. But what did he do? Immediately when he got out, and this was like 2018, immediately got arrested again in Malaysia for being part of a terrorist plot. One track mind. His only goal was to die fi sabilillah, to die a martyr, to die in jihad, to die for Allah. That's all he wanted. He was petrified of dying in prison. You know, when because Mubarak had tried to imprison him before, but he slithered away. And they, anyway, they revoked his citizenship. And that's part of the reason how he ended up coming into Canada and getting refugee status, which is really embarrassing, but that's my country for you. So yeah, there was nothing he wanted more than to end up in heaven with the prophets up there on the highest level with his 72 virgins, all of the things that he'd been promised. He just really, really wanted to get that prize.
And how old were you at this point? I mean, and how are you feeling as this young Canadian woman now with this guy?
So at this point, I was 19 when I was pressured into the marriage with him. I was put into niqab early on. I mean, there's so much backstory to this, Andrew, and a lot of it probably in a nutshell, I'd say the quickest way I can describe to you how I got to that point was my overwhelming desire to have my mom love me and be proud of me. That's all I wanted. And because I didn't have a father in my life, because they got divorced when I was very young, he remarried and had 3 new kids. And he wasn't part of our life. So all I had was my mom. And my mom, as I described to you, was basically like smoke and mirrors. She was a figment of a human, but she wasn't, you know what I mean? Like she was just she did whatever he said or whatever the ideology told her to do. Do you know what I mean? Like she was just she's a cyborg, Sounds like one of the sort of ghosts from the Studio Ghibli. Have you seen the Japanese cartoons, Spirited Away? Yes.
She's sort of just hovering through life. Yeah.
Exactly like that. And because the only thing that for her that would appease her, that would make her proud of me, that would make her love me, is if I was as Muslim as she was. That's what she needed me to be. And so that meant wearing niqab, like covering myself head to toe in black, marrying the man she's telling me to marry, stop questioning things, stop pushing back, I've always been a really curious person. My sister is not. My sister's the total opposite of me. She's more like my mom. She's happy following, her and my mom, like they would find it joyful that there's only one book they need to read. Whereas I wanted to be in the library, I wanted to read all of them, and they thought I was so weird. So I remind myself of Matilda. I watched the play Matilda with my daughter and I cried. I was like, that's me. Like I always felt like a fish out of water. I always felt like the black sheep of the family. And so what happened when around 19 is they had already tried to push me into a marriage with my cousin. And I already got out of that, but I was so exhausted at this point. And my mom was so disappointed in me. She was angry at me because I had gotten out of the marriage with my cousin. And now it's like the whole family knows that I like outsmarted her and that I wasn't listening to her and she wasn't able to control me. And so she was like peak anger at me. And I was peak exhaustion. And so it was like this perfect storm. And at 19 is when it all came to sort of that climax where she said, if you marry this man, then you will make me happy. And if you don't marry him, then you're no longer my daughter. And I don't want to know you. And you can't live in this house. And I don't even want you to come to my funeral. So it was that, but that constant pressure. It's not like we had one conversation, right? But yeah, I basically gave in. And I was like, maybe she'll finally love me. Maybe if I do everything she wants me to do, and I take it as far as it can possibly go, maybe I'll know what it feels like to be loved by my mom.
It's so human.
It didn't work. I did everything. I married the guy. 1 week into the marriage, he was the first time he beat me up because he came into the house and the curtains were open. We were living on the 17th floor. The curtains were open and he's like, don't you have any shame? Everybody can see you. And I said, who's everybody? People in helicopters? Seagulls? And then that's it. Because I was mouthy back at him. And I went to my mom and I said, look at these bruises, look at these cuts, look what he's done to me. Get me out of this marriage. You told me to marry him. Look what he's done to me. And she said, are you stupid? Do you not know your own religion? Have you not read Surah An-Nisa? That's his right to beat you if you disobey or if you show arrogance. So you were showing arrogance. And so it's his right to beat you. You are his. And I was like, I can't do this. I can't live like this. Your husband was beating me up my whole life. And now I'm going to marry this. You're making me marry this guy. Now he's going to beat me up. I can't live like this. Please let me out. And she said, and also it's only been a week. If you divorce him now, everybody in the community is going to say he divorced you because you're not a virgin. Now you have to remember my mom at this point is like, she's a Sharia scholar. She's a student at Al-Azhar University, a master's student at Al-Azhar. And she's the head of the Islamic Studies Department of the Islamic School. So she's like peak Muslim in the community. So she's horrified that he might spread the rumor that people might start to assume if they got separated so quickly, it's because he discovered she wasn't a virgin. So she's like, so you have to stay for a little bit longer.